Attention Alberta cattle producers. ABP delegate nominations are now open with 2-year term positions available in all 5 zones. If you're passionate about Alberta's cattle industry, this is a great way to get involved. Nomination forms must be submitted on or before 11:59 p.m. November 15th. Head to abpdaily.com or reach out to your local delegate for more information.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Bovine. I'm your host, Kara Mastel. Today we're headed way out east to Wallace Bay, Nova Scotia to catch up with the winners of the National Environmental Stewardship Award, or shorthand as you might have seen it around TESA, T-E-S-A, the Environmental Stewardship Award. You may remember a previous episode where I spoke with the winners of the Provincial Environmental Stewardship Award, the Taylor family, presented by Alberta beef producers. The folks I'm bringing on today went on to the next level of competition and received the award from the Canadian Cattle Association. Since 1996, the Environmental Stewardship Award has recognized producers who go above and beyond standard industry conservation practices and set positive examples for other cattle producers and the general public. I'm proud to have with me today the winners of the national award, the father-daughter duo, John and Maria Duynisveld. Together, they have a variety of livestock they raise: beef, cattle, free-range chicken and turkeys, pastured pigs, grass-fed lamb, and a few eggs as well. All the products they raise, they direct market them to the consumer. Currently, they have 250 acres of pasture, 250 acres of woodland, and another 40 acres of neighboring land that they use for pasture as well. However, I don't want to spoil it all for you listeners. I'll let the winners speak for themselves. Maria, now that we've established you've definitely got a few different irons in the fire, let's get going here with one of your favorite parts of the operation, the wildlife. Why don't we start there?
Yeah, our woodland's pretty good. I study insects. We've got a lot of insects around, but we've recorded over 1,000 species on the farm using the iNaturalist app. And we know that we've got many more than that. As far as like macrofauna, we have a lot of deer, we have coyotes, we get foxes, and there's beavers in the lake. You know, a big variety of larger wildlife that people really like to see.
Yeah, owls and eagles and hawks and
lots of birds.
Lots of birds too.
Yeah.
Yeah, bobolinks and barn swallows and a fun little mix, really.
When you say insects, Maria, do you mean like entomology? Or are you actually studying insects?
Well, I finished my Bachelor of Science in Agriculture in 2023. And the research that I did in my last year of study was mostly focused on entomology. And now in the new year, I'm planning to start my PhD, which is going to have an agroecology focus.
Very cool. Okay, so you guys both actually have jobs off the operation, correct?
Well, I do, but Maria does not.
Okay.
Right now, yeah. That's changing soon, but yeah.
So talk about the balance of, having an off-operation job, or in your case, Maria, you're studying. I mean, that's a job in itself. You're busy. Talk about that balancing act of keeping, the livestock alive and healthy and the environment alive and healthy and still having to go to your day job.
Well, I'm really fortunate that with my day job, it's only a 60% position, so it's only 3 days a week. So that's a really big help. And having good staff on the farm is a big help as well. So through the summer, we'll have 4 or 5 people that on part-time and full-time basis that help fill the needs of the different jobs around the farm. Because in addition to raising those animals, we also do most of the processing on farm. So like we have a government inspected poultry processing plant, and we do all our own beef and lamb and pork cutting on farm, sausages, smoking, the whole 9 yards.
Wow. So this operation, did it start with you, John, or has it been in a family for generations, or how did that work?
Well, actually, it started the year I was born. My parents moved to the farm just about 3 or 4 months before I was born. So initially it was a dairy farm until the early 1990s, and then switched over to beef, and the other animals, they sort of came along step by step. It just kind of to feed our direct market demand.
Absolutely. And Maria, was this always a plan to be involved?
Yeah, I think when I was about 14, I decided, oh, I want to be on the farm long term. I've always worked, like, I haven't had a lot of time with the farm where I haven't been a student. So I've always worked full time in the summer, and just kind of here and there when I'm busy with school. When I was a teenager, I decided that's what I wanted to do. And that's why I decided to do like an agricultural degree and stuff too.
So you guys mentioned there's obviously summer help in the winter. Is it just you two? I guess, well,
Uh,
as Maria said, she's not really around. So is it just you, John, in the winter?
no, for the last 4 or 5 years, we've had one person working full time and one or two part time as well. Mostly on the processing and sort of that side of things, but also to help out with the field work when I'm away at work.
So when you say processing, you mentioned chicken processing. Are you also doing cattle processing or like beef processing or?
Yeah, we send our cattle away for slaughter, but we do all the cutting and packaging and any like further processing, and the same for like the pork and the lamb. So all, the sausage making, all that sort of stuff is done on farm. So, and we have a market that we co-founded about 7, 8 years ago now,
Yeah.
in Halifax, and so it's open 4 days a week. So we provide fresh product there every week.
Oh, very cool. Okay, so Halifax, how far away is that from where you guys are?
About 2 hours.
Okay, not terrible, but a bit of a drive.
It is. Yeah. And yeah, it's always nice to be finished delivering in the city and head back home.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are some of the changes or improvements you've seen and made throughout the years? Like, how long have you guys been? Obviously, you keep branching out into different things. Do you want to kind of talk about that process of how the farm has changed since, well, you were born, John?
So yeah, so when I was growing up and until I started university, we were a dairy farm, and essentially I was the youngest child. So when I went away to school, my parents decided that it was just time to kind of scale back, and so they sold the dairy cows and started doing beef. And the intent when they started doing the beef was actually to do a lot of direct marketing with it. So that that it was a new learning curve essentially for my parents because they hadn't done that direct marketing thing before. But as you start to develop a market for one meat product, often your customers are looking for other things that you might be able to provide as well. So the chickens came along, and I guess the eggs came along about the same time, and then turkeys were added in there, and pigs and sheep. They've all kind of come along sort of step by step over about a 10 or 12 year period. Sort of from the farm, sort of the ecological side, I guess. My father started doing grazing management back in 1988. He had gone to a course where they had a grazing expert come up from New Zealand, and he was quite interested in how that might fit onto the farm. So he had one little pasture that he started doing some rotational grazing on, and to this day, that's actually our most productive piece of land on the farm, and it's got the highest level of organic matter as well. So it's one of those things that we've continued to learn and to try new ways to make things better and better. But it really seems to be something that has a really good payback over time, just in the improvement of productivity of the land.
Do you plan to expand the amount of acres you actually do that rotational grazing on then?
Well, yes, like now essentially our entire farm, our 250 acres of, it's essentially pasture land that we do all the with all of our own land, and plus the neighboring land that we use is all pasture as well. So we've been talking a little bit. We might have the opportunity to rent probably another 100 acres from a neighbor of ours, and that would be the intent, would be to use that for pasture as well.
Very
and
neat.
apply grazing management to it.
Lots of different opportunities there, it sounds like.
Yeah. It all takes time.
Yeah, time and work, and absolutely.
Yeah.
So the reason we're here, obviously, is you guys are the national winners of the Environmental Stewardship Award. But I'm going to back up a step here, and I want you guys to talk about the process of first winning the Provincial Environmental Stewardship Award, because you had to win the provincial to go on to the national level. What was that like?
Well, actually, I hate to burst your bubble, but so it's actually a maritime award or not really an award, but a maritime nomination that happens. So the Maritime Beef Council has a bit of a selection committee, and they have people that get recommended to them as possible candidates to look into. So it wasn't really a competition that way as such. It was a nomination, I guess.
Yeah, you still had to attract the attention of the right people, though. You have to do the right things.
Yeah. So anyway, so when we got the message from the Maritime Beef Council that we were, asked to be their nominee for the 2024 year, it was quite exciting, really. Yeah.
Maria, were you surprised?
I was excited. I didn't really know that this existed. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. I was actually backpacking in Australia at the time that we were nominated. So I was going to libraries to get Wi-Fi access and trying to write up our application for the national one. Yeah.
Then you guys went on and you attended the Canadian Beef Industry Conference in Saskatoon in August, I believe it was. Talk about that experience. What was it like? Was that your first time out west? Had you been out west before?
Well, Maria was actually home doing all the farm work.
I had to look after the farm. We had a processing day, and
someone's got to.
Someone had to do that. But yeah. I guess I've been out west a couple of times. The only time I've been to Saskatoon before, though, was like in late December when it was minus 40. So it's a much nicer place actually in the summer than what I recall.
Yes, Saskatoon has a certain charm that it just seems like whenever we have to go there. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Saskatchewan, but it somehow always gets to minus 50 when you have to go there for a conference in the winter.
So the conference itself was really quite interesting. Like really enjoyed that, and meeting all the other nominees. I really didn't think we would be anywhere close to the the one to be awarded the prize.
That's really neat. Then what, you got on the phone and you called Maria and said, "Oh my gosh, we won."
I was moving chickens. I was moving chicken pens in the field when they texted me, Mom and Dad.
Yes.
And then I called you, I think.
Some of the takeaways from the award then? What?
Well, from being at the conference in Saskatoon, one of the big takeaways from meeting all the other finalists is just how many amazing things are being done across the country that are really contributing or helping with beef's positive contribution to the environment. Like just the benefits of good management and thinking about the ecology and the landscape around you when you're making your management decisions on a day-to-day basis. There's so many people doing good things that way.
Oh, absolutely. To me, that's one of the more interesting things about this award is that it's spread across the country. And obviously, I'm working with Alberta beef producers. I'm coming from Western Canada. I'm in Southern Alberta. And I wanted to ask you guys, though, what would you say some of the differences and challenges are that you face out east? Is there anything you noticed when you came out west or talked to some of the other producers that were or the nominees, I guess?
This is a different experience. Obviously, I wasn't at the conference, but I actually did a ranching for profit school in Montana. So I met a bunch of Western beef producers there, and we have so much more rainfall to start with.
Yes, you do.
So like comparing, I don't know, Taurian farms over there and stuff, comparing like pasture density and how many cattle you can feed off an acre of land or whatever, it basically wasn't a comparison. We have to cope with too much rain a lot of the time. That's like a problem we have in the spring. And then I would kind of complain about that to a producer from like West Texas, and they'd just tell me to shut up about that.
Yeah, but it is a different, it's definitely, as somebody who lives in the drought zone and we have had a couple really tough years, it is something though, if you can't get your hay cut because it just keeps raining and raining and raining and raining, that's a challenge too.
Well, exactly. And we get extreme weather too. Like we get hurricanes and things like that, which I don't think you really cope with as much in the West.
No. Not in southern Alberta anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like last summer, like in 2023, we probably didn't have more than a 5 or 6 day window when hay could be made, and things were just so wet. But that, in some ways, that turned out to be a little bit of a blessing in disguise for us, because we weren't able to make as much of our hay as we wanted to, but we had so much extra grass because things grew so well that we actually managed to use stockpiled grass and graze until early February, and only had to feed hay for about 65 days. So that was that kind of showed us some of the potential to really push our grazing season quite far into the winter.
So what's a usual grazing season for you guys?
Probably the average for most beef in the Maritimes would be probably 150 to 180 days, depending a bit on management choices. And most years we'd start grazing probably the last week of April, first week of May, and typically we'd be using our perennial pastures until Christmas or into early January. But we, like I say, with the added grass that we had, and also the shortage of hay that we had, or a good quality hay, we pushed that in like the first week of February. We had a big snowstorm, and that's what put the end to our grazing.
I have friends that farm in Ontario, and they always say, we'll be combining corn till Christmas. And that just baffles me. I'm like, till Christmas? What? But it's really shows how we're all Canada, but we got a lot of vast differences going on.
Well, I know. It's just, it's really impressive to see how people cope with their environment, though, and make things work.
Absolutely. And though, like, not to get hung up on our similarity or on our differences, but there's a lot of similarities too, which is neat that it all kind of brings us together.
Well, I had some really interesting discussions over the years, just talking with different people from Western Canada, and it seems like there's still for a lot of producers, your growing season is maybe not as long as ours. So even with stockpile grazing, it's not easy to graze through the winter, and for a variety of environmental conditions and everything. But this is similar challenges to here, and similar strategies that can work really well. Like we've been doing bale grazing for, dear me, probably 20 years now, which is something I started doing because of reading some articles about people doing it out west, and it works tremendously well for us. We've been doing that. That our cows, that's what they get from the time we're finished with our pastures until the grass is ready to graze again in the spring. What a great way to keep cattle, really. No manure, no bedding.
Well, and what a great way to get value out of those conversations too, right? That it really shows that we just need to talk to each other and stop competing. Like, yes, we're all in competition, but man, we can learn a lot from each other.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
So, Maria, maybe this one is more directed to you. Do you want to talk about the importance of sharing your story? We're in the age of social media, and we're in the age of all sorts of... Our world is so connected so quickly. Do you want to talk about the importance of why we need to share our environmental story in the right way?
Yeah, that's actually one of the big things that I like to focus on the farm, is do like educational stuff. We actually, now this is the 4th year we've done a BioBlitz. So now for 4 years we've done an annual BioBlitz on the farm, which is where we invite the public in to come explore all of the farm, but also look at the wildlife and the conservation efforts that we do. So I try to teach people about ecology stuff, ways that they can measure ecology back home, even if it's just their backyard. They learn a lot about new species, but then they also learn about how our farm is helping to protect them, and how lots of farms around them are also trying to do that. And that has been a huge success for us, like getting people interested in ecology, interested in farming, and interested in the positives of farming, which I don't think they often hear a lot of. And then we also get other producers that come out to things like that, and we do pasture walks sometimes, and more producer focused events, and then it gets to be a bit more technical conversation, which is good, and we can talk more about stuff like grazing management, which is always a good conversation because grazing management really isn't prescriptive. It's adaptive grazing management for a reason. So good conversations are really helpful for that. We've had a lot of really good success doing educational stuff, and we want to keep doing that. I think it benefits our farm, it benefits the community, and hopefully it benefits other producers as well.
Well, absolutely. And there's something about getting boots on the ground. You know, we can talk about grazing management, we can talk about all these things, but let's face it, we live in a seeing is believing sort of world right now. And once you see what rotational grazing does, it's amazing. People go, yeah, I want to do that.
Yes, and back in September when we had our last BioBlitz, so Maria had these little focused areas that she wanted people to look at, and one of them was basically playing in the poop and looking for dung beetles. And it's great when you can get a bunch of kids and people not from a farm just to appreciate this sort of ecological connection that comes, from the cows and the pasture and the bugs that are all help us and we help them.
When you look at all the wildlife and the ecological system that is living out on your operation, do you want to talk about why being a steward of the land is important to you?
I've always been a kid who enjoyed playing with bugs and was off catching frogs all the time. The wildlife stuff always really interested me. And then as I got older and I was getting more into the technical working stuff on the farm, and I became more interested in the business itself, it became a lot clearer to me, the connections between what we were doing and all of those little creatures that I love to play with on the farm. And then I started getting more education in ecology stuff. And I started to see that there's also hard science behind what we're doing and that sort of thing. And the connection of all of that, I think it just really makes a lot of sense. And it's something that I love. It's something that I grew up doing. It's something really grounded in me, but then also to put common sense and the facts to it, and understanding that our stewardship on the farm is what allows those things to exist. I don't know. I just think it's really beautiful.
Just like as Maria said, there's a lot of hard science to this, and I feel a lot of the foundation to that science is the grazing management, that adaptive management, and kind of learning as you go along. Because as you build up the health of the soil, the organic matter, and the biology, it just things seem to feed and just multiply out from there. And that's I think it's just, and we're continuing to learn more, and I think there's still so many more levels we can take this to.
Talk about why being a steward of the land is important for the next generation. Now, obviously, John, you've seen this with Maria. Why is it important that there's something around for the next generation?
Today, Mark Lysing joins us on this edition of Cattle Country, presented by Alberta Beef Producers. I'm Jim Fisher, and Mark, there are a number of bills affecting our beef industry.
Right now we have two federal bills and one provincial bill that we're watching closely. The first is Bill C-282, and it looks to take supply management out of future trade negotiations. This is a fundamentally flawed policy that threatens the long-term sustainability of Canadian farmers and ranchers. It undermines our competitiveness and jeopardizes the future of our agricultural industry. The second is Bill C-293, and it's a pandemic prevention and preparedness bill. While the overall goal of the bill is good because ABP supports emergency planning, the bill unfairly targets animal agriculture. Both of these bills have passed 3 readings in the House of Commons and are currently in the Senate. The third bill that we're tracking is provincial, and it's Bill 28, and it aims to increase fines for the sale of uninspected meats from $10,000 to $100,000. Selling uninspected meat in Alberta is illegal, and ABP supports this move to further deter and penalize unlawful sales. ABP is working on producers' behalf alongside other organizations, both here in the province and nationally. We will keep your communication channels updated as we move forward on advocacy efforts.
Alberta Beef, all for the beef.
It's thinking about, what the implications of management decisions are and how that impacts not just the cattle or the sheep, but also the sort of the ecology and the biology around there. Those are the things that they also actually have positive benefits to our production system itself. So having something that is really kind of an interdependent production system with the biology there, it makes it more sustainable, more resilient in the long term, to make it something that is more viable to exist for another generation, and hopefully something that they see as being valuable and worth continuing with. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And John, I hear you use the word sustainable, and sustainability is one of those words that right now everyone seems to have different definitions, and everyone's struggling to define what is sustainability. What is sustainability to you?
Well, for me, sustainability is, it's there's an economic component to it, and that's something that we strive very hard to try and have include in our decision making. But it also is this trying to have, if not a neutral, or if not a positive impact, but at least a neutral impact on the environment, so that we're, ideally we're enhancing the environment and moving things in a more positive direction. And I think sort of akin to something like, when people talk about regenerative agriculture, well, I know that's a term that means a lot of different things to people as well, but essentially we're trying to make things better for the environment, these things like building this organic matter, which I feel is such a big foundation for all the other things that come along.
Also, like, there is the element of on top of that, we need economic sustainability that way as well.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes our management decisions, like, we're making them for the purpose of helping our business, but then it ends up almost always the decision that's best for the business is what's best for the land in the long term as well. Also, I think going back to what you said about doing things for the next generation, I recently got engaged, so that's something that I'm kind of thinking about long term as well now. It's interesting for me to start looking at stuff on the farm and thinking about, like, this is somewhere where I would want to raise my kids. I want to make it so that they have the same sort of childhood that I had, that's full of frogs and bugs and everything,
That's a great way to look at it. What about we talk about the different aspects of sustainability, and one thing you guys didn't touch on was the social side of it when it comes to, we have to take care of ourselves, that sort of thing as well. What sorts of things do you guys do to make sure that you are able to run the operation as well? Because, if you can't pour from an empty tea kettle.
Well, having good employees to help out in the areas that we either need extra hands in, or equally important in areas maybe where we're not as skilled, or don't have the same background. We currently have a really great lady who does most of our processing side. She manages that component of the business now, and it's been a game changer really for not having to think about as far as like for different ways to prepare our products and different ways to do things just to be more efficient. It's great to have someone who actually can focus on that and let me get back to the things that I really enjoy, like the managing of the animals on the pasture. So finding sort of key people to be able to fill those necessary roles and take some pressure off. That's a really big help.
I think I'll answer that on the less business side of things, and more say that when Dad's stressed, what's best for him is probably to go for a walk in the woods. And I think things like that as well. He says, "Oh, I'm gonna go check out how this patch is doing after the winds or whatever." And and then he comes back and he's a lot less stressed out. And I think things like that, like that's one of the beautiful things of working on a farm, is that you've always got access to nature and the outdoors. But I think sometimes we get really wrapped up in the stuff that we have to do outside, and we have to take time to do something that we want to do outside, you know?
Absolutely. Enjoy what you're building. I know sometimes I do that too. You have to step back, and we're all wrapped up in what we have to do, and sometimes you have to step back and go, wow, we've really created something here.
Exactly.
No, and it is really, really such a relaxing, enjoyable thing to do, just to enjoy what we have. That's right. Thank you for bringing that up, Ray.
and now sometimes when things aren't so relaxing, I have to ask, do you have any advice to give to someone that might be listening if they're managing a business with family members? I mean, especially in a situation such as yours, you're a father and daughter duo. What's that like? How do you manage that? You know, you're sitting around the dinner table, but you're also working together.
A recent thing that's helped is I moved out.
That does help.
But no, Dad and I have always had a really good relationship, genuinely, because I think we have the same goals for the farm, and we come at it from really similar perspectives on the ecology stuff is really my passion, and building the education stuff is something that I want to make my own, and he's all for that. And I think I'm very lucky. Like I know a lot of other farmers my age. I'm 23, and I know a lot of people who don't have as easy of a time with conversations with their parents about ecology or sustainability and future planning that way. But I'm really lucky that Dad sees things the same way that I do.
Have those conversations, those open conversations, allowed you to be able to have, like you said, you've come up with some of these education tools and stuff, have big dreams for where, you know, you could go in the future with the operation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dad is pretty well known in certain areas to teach people about farming and stuff. So that's kind of like I'm learning from example that way too. Yeah, I think we are good at communicating with each other. Like we talk things through a lot, and we're also just both really interested in it. So we'll just have a lot of conversations. Well, if my mom's around, she's like, "Oh, you guys just talk," because we just like talking about it. Yeah.
Well, and from my perspective, over especially the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, it's really been quite a joy to give Maria more responsibility and to have these discussions about some of the bigger picture of, you know, should we do this? Should we not do that? And, you know, as she's, you know, gotten more of her education, more, you know, bringing more things together, we've had more of these conversations that are, you know, long-term direction of what to do on the farm. And that's, you know, it's been great to see how much she knows and how well she can think about the future that way.
Well, I can hear your pride. I can't see you, but I can hear your pride coming through the mic. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it is pretty cool.
So
yeah, advice for families though, just talk to each other.
Sometimes easier said than done, though.
Yeah.
Well, like Maria had mentioned that she went to a Ranching for Profit course a few years ago, and I'd gone through that as well. And communication is, you know, there's a number of other courses that would offer similar sorts of things, but communication between generations is often a challenge, and to, you know, just to kind of always make an effort to try and keep that communication positive and civil is important.
Absolutely.
Not that we have had issues with that very much. I'm sure there's been a few times, but
Maybe I can't think of one. Yeah.
So.
Maybe. Well, that's pretty good. I'm proud of you guys. So, looking at future goals, do you have future goals for yourself or for the ranch or both?
I mean, for me, I would like to build the education side of the farm into like an actual enterprise. Right now, I kind of do volunteer stuff where I bring in the high school classes and they learn about things, or I open it up for the public and everything. But that's not really like a moneymaker for the farm, and it's not wasting my time, but I'm not getting a return monetarily back for my time. So I would really like to build something that is more tangible as an enterprise in the education side of things.
Yeah, over the next probably 3, 4, 5 years, I'm hoping to make some fairly substantial changes in part of our land management. I want to add, okay, so I'll just step back a little bit. Maria had mentioned earlier on that we can have some fairly extreme weather at times. So like we had Hurricane Fiona come through here a couple of years ago, and that was quite devastating. Well, we can get some pretty significant winter storms. We can, I know we've talked about dealing with excess water, but we also can have summers where we have very little water. Like 2020, our rainfall levels for late June into early September were like less than 20% of our normal rainfall, which even though I know a lot of people in Saskatchewan and Alberta would just kind of dream of the amount of rain that we might have to work with, but for our production system and for how many animals we would expect to graze, that became a challenge. So anyway, what I'm looking at starting to implement next year is putting in a series of ditches and ponds and shelter belts that would provide a lot of resilience to these weather extremes. So it deal with like some of our longer, wetter fields that have like a long hill to them, put some series of ditches and ponds across there that will help with the drainage, but also have a storage component for that water and shelter belts on either side so that we can use that for windbreak, for shade, for a whole host of reasons. And kind of the cool thing about all that is it also feeds into that whole ecology side of things, because when you start putting in these ponds and shelter belts where there's just so many animals and other critters and plants and everything else that all will start to thrive in that as well. So
yeah, we've been talking a lot about what kind of plant species to introduce into that and stuff, making it high value trees and things too.
Okay, anything else you would like to add about your experience throughout this whole process, or anything about your ranch?
Well, so many of the things that we do to try and encourage and promote this biology, it really helps us a lot too. Like, so we do a lot of managing of our land. So we'll allow like bobolinks to be able to fledge their young. So essentially what we'll do, we'll graze a field early. We'll leave it for about 2 months from early June until late July to let these bobolinks have their young and get them up in the air. And then we'll use like high density grazing to be able to get efficient use of that taller, older grass that way. But the bobolinks are a great addition to the farm because they catch bugs, and they're just incredibly helpful to us that way. So we help them, they help us. And same sort of thing with our barn swallows. Like we don't try to lock up our barn and keep the barn swallows up, which is kind of a common thing right now with biosecurity concerns and things. But we have, I don't know, how many barn swallow pairs did we have this past year?
There were over 100 adults.
Yeah.
So
and it's really cool because their young are in the barn, but they'll be wherever the herd of cows are. So our cows are moved every 1 or 2 days at the most, so they're very concentrated. And the barn swallows are constantly through the daylight hours over top of these cows, eating the horse flies and the deer flies and the mosquitoes that are bothering our animals. So it's kind of like this we help nature, but nature helps us, and it's really, really quite fun and quite fascinating to see how that all can work together.
Very cool. The ecosystem keeps doing its thing.
It does.
I do think there's a community element to things as well. Like we're direct marketers, so we do have the benefit of having lots of interaction with our community, but we do try to nurture that as well. I have sat on the board for our local farmers market for many years now, 4 years. And like I said before, we have people coming onto our farm, whether it's classes or producers or just the general public. We have a good relationship with our local food bank. We work with other farmers. We work with vegetable growers to try to market our products together. And yeah, we have a great relationship with our customers because they talk to us and they watch the silly little videos that we put online. And you go to a farmer's market, and I had a friend with me at a farmer's market, and he said, it seems like everybody who comes up and talks to you is like your grandfather because, we have a really good relationship with our community. And I think that's a really important thing to build when we're talking about farming, is also that we're feeding communities, and we're part of those communities. And that's something that we like to really nurture, that connection,
Is that where you get most of your contacts for direct marketing, is through the farmers market?
No, that's actually, it's a growing part of our farm, but it's not a very large farmers market. It's once a week. We've had a lot of like word of mouth through the city is where most of our marketing goes, because the farmers market is just in our local town.
But then we have our bigger market that's, well, it's not really a storefront, but I guess it'd be what you call truly an organic evolution. But it's a 4-day week market in Halifax that is run by staff that our partner manages. It's a vegetable farm that we partner with there, and it's been a tremendous opportunity to reach into the city and to connect with people that are more removed from the farm. But we don't have that same interaction with them where we're talking with them all the time. So we do have every second week we do a slightly separate delivery into the city where I send out an email and talk a lot about what's going on in the farm, different issues environmentally or agriculturally, just to kind of provide a bit of a communications from our perspective on things like that. And so that's sort of another sort of that community outreach that we're able to do that way. And some of that, it does feed into our bigger market, our bigger farm market in the city. Yeah.
So the meat that's at that market, it all comes from you guys?
It does, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, we need to do better with social media. That's something that we need to grow for marketing, but neither of us are very good at that.
Well, the older I get, the less I want to have anything to do with social media. Yeah, I just want to kind of curl up in the woods and look out at the cows and the pigs and say, there we go.
I posted a video of the piglets yesterday. This is the first time I'd posted in too long. And I said, on a related note, we'll have bacon available on Friday. Which I don't know if that was a smart marketing decision or not.
So if listeners want to follow you on social media, I'm assuming Instagram, or what are you talking about here?
We really only use our Facebook. Hopefully this will grow in the future.
Okay, how can they find you on Facebook?
We're Holdanca Farms. That's Holdanca Farms on Facebook.
Perfect. Okay, everyone, go give them a follow. Okay, well, thank you guys very much for your time. It was nice to be able to meet you, and hopefully sometime our travels will meet us up, maybe in Saskatchewan.
Yes, and if ever you're out this way, we're just minutes from the beach. There's lobsters here as well as grass-fed beef. And, yeah, so, we'd love to show you around.
I hear there's a little bacon coming soon.
That's right. Goes really good with the lobster.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you guys very much, and good luck with the rest of your endeavors.
Well, thanks, Kara.
It's conversations like these that truly remind me just how vast our country is. So many similarities and so many goals we are working to reach, but yet a completely different climate and set of challenges. Thanks again to everyone for tuning into this conversation. Please don't hesitate to send us a text with your thoughts simply by pushing the send us a text button if you're listening on Spotify. If you aren't listening on Spotify and would like to reach out to us, you can either head on over to your social channels and hashtag ABPs the Bovine, or you can send me an email directly, karam@albertabeef.org. Good luck, be safe, and we'll talk to you next time.